Are you ready to learn? Because my super experienced guests are ready to share some really valuable information. Make sure and listen all the way to the end to get help and support. So let's start with the best audio experience.
Hello guys, welcome to our show. Today we discuss about marketing. Even more, we are going to touch the topic how to become a more impactful and confident marketer, because I know it's hard today to compete with many others. Our niche is overwhelmed and overpriced, but if you have the right strategy, if you know where you are going, and if you are willing to change, update, and get new skills, then you can do it. And I'm so excited to discuss this topic with Stacey Danheiser. How are you?
Yes, hi, I'm great. Thanks for having me.
A big pleasure. I want to learn more about that because, from my experience, when I'm learning something new, it takes time to get this confidence, and nobody knows what exactly will work in that. So we need to test a lot. Stacey, before we start, just tell more about yourself, experience, background, and why you live on this awesome place close to the beach on Pompeo Beach.
Yes. Yes. Okay. So hi, I'm Stacey. I spent the first part of my career working in corporate marketing. I worked for 5 different Fortune 500 companies. I started in consumer marketing and then I switched over to B2B marketing. And and after about 14 years of that, decided to leave and go start my own consultancy. And so that's what I've been doing for the past 7 or 8 years now. I've also written a couple of marketing books, and I'm about to publish a ebook called "Look Inside: The Real Reason You're Not Winning the Marketing Game." And so I love marketing. I've been in marketing for a while. I've been teaching marketing strategy and helping companies with marketing strategy, and that's primarily what I do today. Is work with scaling B2B organizations that want to bring on more sophistication to their marketing approach, and really be more strategic with how they're acquiring and retaining customers.
Nice,
And
nice.
Pompano Beach, of course, I mean, for those of you that know South Florida, you know that it's a hard place to leave once you come here. So we were fortunate that my husband's job, he got a job opportunity here in South Florida, and so we relocated from Denver, Colorado. So traded in the snow for the sand, and it's been about a few years now. We love it. So
Yeah, awesome, awesome. Love it, love it. Okay, let's start from creating the right strategy. Because, I opened your LinkedIn profile and I can see the first sentence on your background: marketing strategies that accelerate results. Often see when companies use generic strategies. According to Content Marketing Institute, probably, if I remember correctly, but that was a study that most companies have no documented content strategy. So they use just generic strategies. And I often speak with many different companies. They analyze competitors, check out how they get traffic, sales, and do the same to replicate their strong sides, their unique selling proposition. But in the end, we need to consider our strong side, our unique selling proposition. Stacey, can you tell how to create the right strategy?
yes, yeah, no, I love the question because, what I see a lot of marketing teams doing today is that they just jump straight to execution. There is often a neglect that has been happening within the marketing team for so long that when they finally get somebody to come in full time, everybody's just ready for that person or that team to start executing. And so I have, a 9-step process. Step 8 is execution, and that's where everybody wants to start. But often they will spend a ton of money, waste a lot of energy and a lot of resources on execution, trial and error, copying competitors, trying this tactic or kind of following the bright shiny object with and often what the issue is that there is no real strategy. So what does marketing strategy even mean? In my view, it's really there's going back to the foundation and the basics. So does everybody agree on customer segmentation? Do we know the right customer segments that we're going after and why? Targeting is another one, account targeting, very specific company names, but also specific role types and buyer types within those companies. And this is something, we've seen grow over time. It used to be 5 or 6 people involved in B2B purchases. Now it's up to 11 or 12. So that's a lot of knowledge that you have to gather in terms of targeting, all the different roles that you need to convince. The third area is positioning. So how are you positioning yourself against the competitors, and including kind of the status quo? People are already solving the problem today, and you have to really dig in and understand, how you're going to convince people to do something different. And so positioning is a big area. And then we move on to value proposition. A lot of what you're seeing, my co-authors and I did a whole bunch of research into the sea of sameness, where we scraped websites and Twitter feeds of the top telecom companies, for example, and we found that everybody was telling the exact same story, the same YS pitch, they're using the same jargon. And that's really just simply that they don't really understand the purpose of a value proposition, which is to uniquely tell customers why they should purchase from you versus somebody else and what they're going to get from it. So when they actually implement and use your product or service, what will they get? And then you move on to kind of the messaging and the content strategy, and really understanding the specific buying process, right, and creating content around the entire customer's journey from awareness all the way to renewal or referrals. And so that requires different types of content for each stage of that journey. And then ensuring, this is kind of the ongoing piece, is ensuring that marketing goals are tied to business goals. So a lot of times, what I see is companies are starting to just execute a campaign or try to launch a new product or launch into a new market. It doesn't really clearly map to what the business is trying to achieve. So, the business may say we have a revenue target or a sales target, but there are different ways to solve that problem. There are different ways to get revenue, and the marketing strategy really needs to help articulate that and clearly map to that, because strategy, at the core of what strategy is, it's about saying no. It's about saying yes to a very finite, focused set of activities and saying no to everything else. And that's really hard, I think, for companies to accept. So, that's what I think, when I think of marketing strategy and when I help companies go through it, often I find that there are specific holes happening at one of those steps.
Nice. Valuable. Love it. Okay, Stacey, I have the question about B2B. You mentioned that you pay more attention to B2B niche, and I'm interested about transferring the right data or knowledge to decision makers, because according to some tweets, according to many other consultants, they usually tell that companies implement 40% of all recommendations, so 60% are ignored. And in B2B, it's even harder to explain that we need to do it. It's very important because companies have other priorities, they have no time, many other excuses. So can you tell your methods, because you mentioned that you consult B2B companies, your methods, how to tell so that we need to do something and to handle or manage the process?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple things. Let's see. I like to start with awareness. Okay, so self-awareness is usually the first step, which is, what are the gaps that we have today, and getting everybody to agree on that. I created actually a free tool called the Confident Marketer Scorecard that is meant to be a self-assessment for people to go through. If you're a CEO, you can answer it on behalf of the team. If you're a CMO, you can answer it on behalf of the team. If you're an individual contributor, you can answer this for yourself. Or if you're a team of one, of course, you're doing everything. But it's really meant to illuminate gaps. And I think that's part of the issue right from the beginning, is what is the problem that we're all trying to solve? So getting agreement on that is really step one. So sometimes I go into companies and do a marketing assessment. I do an assessment of their full marketing strategy, but also the competencies and skill sets on the marketing team. And that really helps the executives get a sense of, where we are today, where we are today versus where do we want to be, and what gaps do we have in the middle. So that's step one, is awareness. The second piece is alignment, and getting alignment on the path forward. So like I mentioned in the strategy, often, there's I would say 2 or 3 primary gaps that I see over and over at every company, no matter what the size is. The first is that there's a gap between what marketing activities are happening and what marketing is doing versus what the company is trying to achieve. And I read some stat recently that said only 40% of marketers are creating their strategies with the company's goals in mind. And so that is shocking to me, because that means they're doing a whole bunch of activity. For what purpose? I'm not sure. So, that piece is always missing. So I like to get alignment on the goals, as I mentioned, because strategy is about saying no, right? So what are we going to focus on? Let's pick the 2 or 3 biggest initiatives, the biggest areas of focus, because it takes a lot of time and energy to get momentum in marketing, and we need to have everybody focus on the right things. So that's the first piece. The other piece that I see is always a gap is customer knowledge. So this particularly happens more in B2B companies than B2C, because in a B2C company, marketing is the sales department. They can go put a campaign out there and get immediate results and immediate feedback from the market, because there is no additional barrier of having to reach customers. In B2B, you have an extra layer. You have marketing, then you have sales, then you have customers. So marketing can get some feedback on content, or copywriting, testing messaging on a website, for example, but they're not really talking directly to customers to see. And especially when you have very long sales cycles, marketing has to rely on the sales team and get feedback from the sales team. And so that's a huge gap, is how well the marketing team understands customers. And this is another area to get alignment on, is what are the customer problems we're solving? What's the primary value proposition to reach these customers? And then let's talk about creating content that the customers need. So alignment to customers is always a big one. And then the third area that's a big gap, especially in B2B, is the marketing and sales alignment piece. So you have sales targeting specific customers and doing their own thing, and then you have marketing going out there and publishing ads or trying to get generic leads that the sales team never follows up on. And you've probably heard all of the issues happening over the past decades between marketing, sales, and sort of that tension. And often what I find is that it's baffling to me that sales has a very specific targeted list of accounts that they're trying to go after, and then marketing, meanwhile, is blasting and spending a ton of money on ads and other generic awareness activities and bringing in so-called leads, but the salespeople are never picking it up because they're not incentivized, and 2, if they have a specific account list, that's what they're going to try to build relationships around. So unless the lead that's coming in is on their list, they're probably not going to touch it. So I like to get marketing and sales alignment and have that conversation about the sales process and how marketing can help really progress deals through the sales funnel. So
Nice.
it's a different approach.
Yeah, valuable. By the way, when I wrote an article about 63 the best content creation marketing tools, and one of my tools was to speak with salespeople, because salespeople can provide a lot more data than many other tools, and
Yes.
this data is much better than we can get from the average data. I mean, like from online tools, SEMrush, Ahrefs, most many others, because you get this data from your customers, and your goal to satisfy their intent, to help and support them. And can you tell how to improve cooperation between salespeople and marketers? Because salespeople distrust marketers. I don't know why. Probably many things. why we have
Okay.
this issue, but in the end, we have this distrust, and sometimes companies have policy: don't share data, don't show data, and marketers need this data. If you want to get effective marketing campaigns, you need to show data to marketers because they can analyze and create the right marketing campaigns. So can you tell how to explain to business owners
Yeah.
that we need this data and how to improve cooperation between salespeople and marketers?
Okay, yes. So I'm going to give you a story about when I worked in one of my corporate jobs. When I actually switched over from B2C to B2B, the first thing I realized was that while I had a budget and that I got to manage my budget and figure out how to allocate it, the sales leadership team actually had way more influence than marketing. And so that was something that was new to me coming from the consumer side. And so what I did was I started building relationships with the salespeople right away and started traveling with them and started to really understand how they were doing business with their customers. Now, the other thing that I did was I asked to attend sales training, because what I quickly found out was that salespeople, and at least, especially if you work in a larger company, we had a sales methodology that the sellers were expected to follow. And so there was a very specific nomenclature as to how salespeople were doing their job. And, there's spin selling, there's, Miller Hyman, there's targeted account selling. There's a bunch of different methodologies out there. Challenger sale is another one. So at minimum, I would recommend that every marketer needs to get either sales training if your company has that, or get to your sales leadership team and ask them what their favorite sales methodology book is, and read that so that you can really understand that the process of sale, there's a very specific process of sales, just like there's a very specific buying process. And so when you can be the intersection between the two, all of a sudden you get a lot more credibility from your sales counterparts. So I think the issue that's happening right now that I see is that marketers have not yet earned the credibility with their sales counterpart. And that's why they're not invited to customer conversations. That's why they're not invited to look at the data, because the salespeople are worried that they're going to say the wrong thing or do the wrong thing, somehow mess up the deal. And they don't want to necessarily invite a bunch of people into their deal unless they know that they're there to help progress it. And I've seen this happen multiple times. And so my path was always build a relationship with sales, use the same nomenclature that they're using, and to show them that I understand their challenge and issues, and to be helpful, to add value during the sales process, because I know all the content that we have, and I know have a different perspective, having worked with a lot of different sales teams. And so I can make recommendations that the sales team might not consider. And they always found that super valuable. So that was my path. And I think today a lot of marketers are just way behind the scenes. And, you can imagine, but just put yourself in the seller's shoes for a second. If you're asking for data about their deals and they have deals that are stalled, that all of a sudden is kind of showing a window into maybe it's a seller deficiency, right? So there's a little bit of a challenge there, and you just got to be sensitive that you don't want to necessarily call the salespeople out. And I think that a lot of the times that I see that there's a hesitancy to give data, it's an ego thing. It's an ego protection of, I don't want to get called out. I don't believe you're here to help me. I believe you're here to call me out.
Mhm.
And so, but when you understand the sales process, and when you've built credibility and trust with your sales team and your leadership team, that goes away, because now they know that you're coming at it from a place of helping, not hurting.
I love it. Yeah, awesome. It's a great tip. You need to understand what they do, to spend some time, probably to sell something, or spend time with them. So if you understand their pain points, you can understand how to improve cooperation and build relationships. Stacey, I like the name of your company, Shake Marketing. And, for me, if you call the company, if you create the right name, you can go much better ahead. I don't know, named it. So can you tell why shake marketing? What kind of shaking marketing you provide?
Yes, yeah. So the name shake marketing came from a couple of concepts. One was to shake it up and to try something new. I think marketing is always
Mhm.
about experimentation, and I love, it's not just following the same playbook year after year or copying what is happening in your industry or with your competitors. So it's first and foremost about shaking things up and doing things differently. The other concept is about, a shake, like a protein shake or a milkshake, or even a shaken martini, where it's the concept that everything needs to be well blended. So I think what's happened, what I have seen happen over time is that marketing has become so specialized into a tactic. So where you have people who just understand the website, or just understand SEO, or just understand email, or just understand social media, and that's not how customers interact with your brand. And so this concept of like shaken together and well blended is like integrating everything and being consistent with your brand and how you're showing up across all of these different channels and platforms, because a customer doesn't care at the end of the day who's running your Twitter channel versus who's sending the emails. They just view it all as coming from the same company, and it needs to look and sound like it's coming from the same brand. And so that's really, my approach is helping people with those two things, building a strategy that is fully integrated across the entire customer life cycle. I'm always looking at it from a customer's point of view. So
Nice. Okay, let's talk about customer persona, buying persona, life cycle. Because once I spoke with a webmaster who lost 400,000 traffic a month because Google dropped some his ranking positions, but
okay.
he didn't lose any sales. So he got great traffic, good traffic, huge traffic, but this traffic didn't sell products. And I see it's a common issue when people choose keywords that are related to their business, but these keywords didn't sell. Customers have a different mindset, or they have no buying intent, many things. So can you tell how to unite? Like if we create content, how do we know that this content will sell in the end and help our company to grow?
Yeah. Well, the first concept let's talk about real quick is the concept of value. Okay. So you have really three stages of value. The first is to uncover value. And that is simply, what is it that our customers want and need from us? And the best way to do this, of course, you can do some keyword research, but again, this is marketing like way behind the scenes. The best way to do this is to interview your existing customers and to figure out, why did you actually choose us? You had all these different options. What was the problem that you came to us to solve, and how come you chose us? And what value are we delivering at the end of the day for you when you use this product or service? And to capture from their words what it is that they want and need and like and value. Okay, so that's step one. Step two then is to learn how to communicate value. And again, this is really the marketing and sales job. If you understand what customers want and value, now you have to go uniquely tell that story in the market, right? And so this is where content comes into play, and where testing messaging comes into play, and where making sure that your story is consistent between the marketing and the sales handoff. So if you have pitch decks, case studies, that kind of thing, that are reinforcing your value proposition. And I like to go with the approach of value themes, which we've written about in our book, Valuology. And that's simply trying to find 2 or 3 big value themes that will resonate with the majority of your customer types. It starts to get a little nuanced as you go into verticals. So let's say that you're going after financial services, you might have to tell a specific story, but it's trying to, let's say, if pick a value theme like efficiency. We want to help make your business more efficient. Now, how do we make financial services companies more efficient, right? And so you're just telling it through that specific lens. So that's the second piece is communication. And then there is delivering value. And so the third piece, and often what I see is there's a handoff. Marketing and sales is so focused on the top of the funnel and getting people in to sign the deal. But then once the customer signs the deal, marketing and sales leaves. They're now focused on trying to acquire another customer. And now you have a handoff to a customer success team, or a product team, or somebody who's there to help them do onboarding. And then you have account management, which is ideally there to make sure that they're using the product and that they're going to renew the product and hopefully refer you to other business. So marketing in most of the, especially SaaS companies today, are completely absent in the back half of that process. And so, but understanding the whole value loop is that your value proposition is just a promise of what you're going to deliver. And you need to make sure that you're actually delivering it. And then that feeds your marketing cycle. Going back to your question, how do we make sure that the content is relevant? Well, if you pulse on your customers in that whole value loop, then you'll know that it's relevant, because you're getting validation and you're creating case studies and use cases and customer stories that are 100% relevant because it's happening right now, versus sitting behind a desk and trying to do keyword research and guessing at what people might be looking at. You have access, if you have customers, you have access to real data right now that you should be tapping into.
Nice. Yeah, I agree. I love it. Stacey, let's talk about how to create content, because it's a big issue. I often see when companies limit budgets to create content, and I think Yesterday I spoke with one webmaster, and he told me he hired a girl who can write text for $5-10 per 1,000 words. For me, no way, I don't know. If you need such low quality content, you can ask ChatGPT. It creates much faster, much better content. And today, if you want to win, you need to create only high quality content. But once I spoke with Jim Edwards. He had been working in Business Insider for 10 years. He started on company from scratch. Then the company was sold for $500 million, 1,000 employees.
Wow.
Great success. And he told me that their success depends on creating non-boring content. Business, this niche is boring. Like marketing, we can call it. It's boring. But if you create non-boring content, it's not boring. It's interesting to read. And I found many business books are great for sleeping. When you have the problem with sleep, you can take a new book to read before night, sleep well. You can save money for pills, medicine, just take a new boring book. So I think we need to combine creating content between entertainment and value education, because if we just share value, probably it's boring. And according to YouTube data, to analytics, that people bounce fast. 80% of people bounce for a few seconds. So can you tell how to create non-boring content from your experience?
Yes. Okay. So, a couple of things. Whenever I see that statement that B2B content is boring, I think it's all relative to who you're talking to. It's probably, if you're talking to marketers, or if you're talking to somebody who works at an agency who's seeing content all day long, they may say that's boring. But if you're writing and producing content for highly technical fields in IT or manufacturing or engineers and software folks, financial services analysts, the definition of boring, I think, is all relative. So I would just be careful with that, because whenever I see that, I think, oh, these are agency people talking to marketers. And what's very clear, because I've worked in a lot of very sophisticated industries, in IT, where we were talking to the CIO, that was our target audience. Or financial services, we're talking to highly sophisticated analysts who are managing, multi-billions of dollars. And so I think those folks don't necessarily think of the content as boring. It's more about, is the content useful?
Mhm.
And I think marketers sometimes try to be a little too clever. And what ends up happening is that it comes across as fluff. And so my concern with Chat GPT or using, somebody who's charging $3 to write an entire, 1,000 word article is that they don't have the depth of knowledge. And sure, you can go
Yeah.
put that out there and maybe get a little bit of traffic, but the reader, especially if the reader is a sophisticated business person, they're going to be able to tell in 1 second whether or not you know what you're talking about. And so it's having the depth of knowledge, I think, is number one. And making sure, and how are people doing this today? Well, you have access to subject matter experts in your company. Unless you're marketing to other marketers, chances are you're not the subject matter expert. And so you need to leverage other people in your company, whether that's your product team, your engineers, your IT folks, your finance team, if you're talking to finance professionals. Find somebody in your team who is the persona of the customer that you're trying to meet, so that you can start to really understand their day-to-day in their world. And then leverage them. This is where interviews come in handy, where you can ask them questions and really kind of do a brain dump of what's in their brain and turn that into an article or a piece of thought leadership. So that's number one. The second piece that I think is going to be a way for companies to stand out, and it's been trending for a while, but it's more on that thought leadership side of doing your own research and coming up with your own insights. And this is a skill set, I think, frankly, that a lot of marketers don't necessarily have, right? This is the ability to gather data, but also to analyze data and to make sense of it all. And I think there's going to be some companies that do this really well and that are able to stand out and present findings, insights in a way that nobody's thought about it before. So all of a sudden, it's thought provoking, and I would say not boring. Why? Because it's different. It's telling a different story. It's sharing a different perspective. It's getting you to think differently. That is not boring. And then third, which has also been trending for a while, is learning storytelling. And this is the ability to tell a story from, the best examples are really from your customer's point of view. So case studies right now, I think, are really boring because it's telling it from the company's perspective. Here was this challenge that the customer had, and here's the solution that we offered, and here were the great results that they got. And it just follows this super boring path versus hearing it from the customer's standpoint of, I was stressed out and I was feeling all these emotions and this was happening in my world. And then I was able to come up with this, find this example in this company, and they helped me. And here were these great results that I were able to achieve. So there's definitely, I think, an opportunity for companies, for marketers to tap into customers and to really learn their stories and to start telling those stories into the market in a unique way. And then also just learning in content in general how to tell stories. And so taking a storytelling class and learning the storytelling frameworks that are available will be extremely helpful to make it not boring. And then last piece of advice, because I've worked in so many different industries, I think this is where agencies can come into play, is borrow from other industries. See what's working in other industries. If you're in B2B, there's a ton of B2C marketing plays that have not yet really been leveraged in the B2B space. And so, borrow some of these ideas and try them out and do some experimentation to figure out how to break through all the clutter. At the end of the day, the reason I think the boring piece comes into play is that it's not breaking through. So
Mhm. Yeah. You mentioned a few times about testing, experiment. I usually count how many times you can tell something. I lost my track, but let's talk about that. So, in my life, I made a lot of mistakes. A lot of. For me, it's hard to count all of them. But sometimes I don't know another way how to avoid mistakes by doing them. So I do mistakes, I can learn from them and go ahead, because I don't know where to get the book or all skills how to avoid mistakes. Yeah, it's part of the process.
Yeah.
And can you list common mistakes that companies still do, and your tips how to find a much better way.
Okay, mistakes that they make on marketing?
Yeah, in marketing. Yeah.
In marketing. Okay. I'm like, where do we want to start with that? There's a lot of mistakes.
Common.
I'm with you too.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I'm with you. I like to, and I think most people do. This is how we actually gain confidence is we read
Yeah.
something, right? It's about knowledge, practice, and experience. So the first step is knowledge, reading about it, watching a video about it, listening to something. But that's all. I can watch videos all day long about other people, like how to play the guitar. But if I never actually pick up the guitar and start playing and start practicing, I'm stuck on stage one. And so it's about one, being careful kind of who you're following, right? And where you're getting your knowledge and your information from. And then two, making sure that you're practicing this. And eventually the practice leads to, like you're saying, you either fail and learn from it, or you succeed and learn from it. And so kind of having that constant learning mindset. So I would say a couple of things. Where would I start with all the marketing mistakes? Let's start at the very top, which is marketing job descriptions and the job of a marketer. I think a lot of companies are assuming that all marketing professionals are created equal and that there's one job for a marketer. And that's just not true, as we know. And I think it's, one of the books that I co-wrote was called Standout Marketing. And we found that there were 5 core competencies that are required for marketing teams. And I'll just quickly go through them. It spells the acronym VALUE. So it's V for visionary. It's the ability to have foresight and to set a strategy and have a pulse on what's going on and looking ahead. A is for activator, and these are the ability to get buy-in and make projects happen and juggle a lot of activities. L is for learner. This is your problem solvers and the people that say, we don't know what the answer is, but we're going to go find out. U is for usefulness. This is like the content creators being able to connect the dots from what a company sells to what the customer cares about, and to present that in a creative way. And then the E is for evaluator. And these are your data folks, your marketing ops people that are able to collect and analyze data and figure out what's working, what's not, and then what to go do about it. And so I like to use that as a framework for marketing job descriptions, because if you're a leader, if you're a marketing leader and you're posting a marketing leadership role, you need somebody that's very strong in that visionary, that's able to have a pulse on the market and the competitors and really understand what's going on, and how to set a vision for the company and for the marketing and for the brand. So, but I see a lot of companies when they're first starting out, who do you think they hire? They go straight to the A, the people that are they're good doers, they're executors, and we just need a bunch of A's. But over time, the leadership team gets frustrated because they're like, we have a whole team of executors and we don't have anybody doing any strategy. Well, that's because that's what you hired for. And so looking at the marketing job description and realizing that, the well-rounded team needs really all 5 of those competencies. And you're rarely going to find the unicorn where somebody does all of those 5 really, really well. So, so that's number one, is not just going to Google and cobbling together a bunch of different job descriptions into one, unicorn marketer. I think the second big mistake that I see in B2B marketing, which we've already talked about, is being super disconnected from customers. So marketers are not allowed to talk to customers. They're not doing any customer research. I mean, in my own research, I found that, like, once I asked a question about how frequently do you do customer research, almost like 75% say we have no budget for customer research. And the other people said, well, we do it, less than twice a year. So that's a huge problem, because we saw, like, 2020 is a great example of why customer research is important, right? You could have had an entire marketing plan built out for the year of 2020, and 6 weeks into the year, that plan was thrown out the window, and now all of a sudden we have a lockdown and nobody's going into the office, right? And everything changed really quickly. And so if you don't have your pulse on what's happening, irrelevance is following. So that's a really huge miss. And then I would say the third is around targeting. That's like the number one issue actually that I see. It's so obvious, but when you ask the question, who is our ideal customer and what customer segments do we have the most success in and which customer segments are our most profitable? Most marketing and sales teams will have different answers for that. And that's a huge problem because effective marketing starts with the number one question, which is who are we talking to? And if we cannot all agree on who we're talking to, then what are we creating, right? It's like you're going to get a little bit of a hodgepodge selection going into the market, and that's going to show up super inconsistent. And so I would say those are kind of my top three. And if I was to add a fourth for a bonus, I would say that marketing is one of those fields that's always changing. And when we were doing research for our book, the one I was fascinated with was about the learner. Okay. I'm a lifelong learner. I love to read. I love to watch things. I also love to create things. So I'm constantly learning. And I assumed that other people were like that. The learning mindset, they must have that if they're in marketing. But what we found is that a lot of marketers are so busy with a long list of things to do that learning and personal development and getting better in your career always falls to the bottom of the list. And I would say that's a huge mistake for marketing. I've seen people work themselves like out of a job and because they became irrelevant, their skill set, they didn't have a pulse anymore. And all of a sudden you have different people coming in from across the business who are more opinionated or louder or more assertive. And it's like ChatGPT right now. Every single marketer should be learning about how to use ChatGPT. I mean, it's going to change the profession for sure. And don't wait for your boss or somebody else to come and tell you, hey, can you go check this out? And can you learn about what this means for our business? You got to get proactive about your own learning and really make that sort of a sacred space on your calendar that you're going to develop, because it's really the only thing that people can't take away from you as well, that you just, that you're constantly getting better. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. 100%, because marketing is a quickly changing world. So if you don't update your skills, then this AI will replace you in the future. But if you update, if you consider new technologies, I think you can use this AI to overcome others. It's just helper. Stacey, the final question. When I speak with you, I can feel your confidence. You're a confident marketer. So can you tell for my audience, if someone wanna become a confident marketer, if you started today from scratch without any experience, knowledge, skills, completely from scratch, what will you do today to learn more about marketing?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. Let's see. I think one of the big things, having looked back on my career and also the people that I work with today, and the reason that there's such a mistrust happening between the CEOs and their marketing teams is that marketers don't understand the business. And so I would say the number one thing, for marketing, there's kind of a whole bunch of stuff you have to learn. But if I was to I'll say two things. One is about learning the business. Sit down you can take a finance class, go learn how to read a balance sheet, go learn how businesses are being measured, go learn about the difference between a revenue and an expense, so that you can have a full sort of picture of how the business is being run and what the language of business. Okay. Because marketing is creating their own language. And we've created a whole entire list of acronyms that you need to know to be able to work in marketing. And at the end of the day, the CEO and the CFO do not care about this language. They have their own language, which the rest of the business speaks, which is all finance. And so that's number one, is that prioritize learning the business and basic business language and measurement. And then the second would be customer research and how to figure out audience preferences, customer research, customer value. We've talked about all of that. But those two areas really. Marketing, what is marketing? It's being able to connect the dots from the company to the customer. And if you think of yourself as a bridge between the two, then you have to really understand both sides of that equation. So that would be my advice, is to learn how to, like, buyer psychology and how people are making decisions, because marketing is the only department that is researching or should be researching this. Everybody else can pretend to or have an opinion about it, but marketing should really be the ones coming to the table with real actionable customer intelligence. And so learning how to do that is massive. Yeah, so those would be the two.
Nice. Love it, Stacey. It's a big pleasure to get you on my show, to learn from you. Tell our audience the best way how to learn more about you, how to follow you, how to reach out to you.
Yes, yeah. So I'm active on LinkedIn. I would love to connect on LinkedIn. Please reach out. And then I also, like I mentioned, I created a free tool called the Confident Marketer Scorecard. You can Google that, or we'll drop a link to that. And that is a tool that you can go through, answer some self-assessment questions, and get a personalized report with some customized feedback on how you can start to improve your marketing approach.
Nice. Okay, guys, you can find all these links in the description below. Listen us on Apple, Google, Spotify. Thanks again for your time. A big pleasure. Love it.
Thank
so
you.
valuable and fun. Okay, guys, thanks a lot for watching and listening us.
All right.